Good evening. It's 8 o'clock on this Thursday evening. I'm Yvonne Okwara Matole. On the big story tonight, IEBC Chair Wafula Chebukati and his fellow commissioners are set to appear before the Joint Select Parliamentary Committee on Electoral Law Changes. Chebukati was before the committee alone earlier today, but was denied a hearing and sent away to return with at least 4 commissioners. The poll agency chairman had earlier filed a petition at the Supreme Court over forms 34A and 34B, which are used to collate votes at polling stations and constituency tallying centers during elections. Chebukati was seeking clarification on how to handle discrepancies in tallies in the 2 forms. Well, while clarifying that he has no control over what Parliament debates, the IEBC chair had indicated earlier on, if you remember last week, that the Commission does not need any new laws to carry out its mandate with respect to the repeat presidential election scheduled for the 26th of this month. Listen.
We don't need any more laws to give Kenyans an election on 26th of October. But if Parliament passes the laws, I've also said I hope those laws will not change the framework we have put in place, because if they do so, then they'll put us in a very precarious situation, because we have already set training manuals.
Well, that is what he had to say last week. We will definitely be trying to listen to what he has to say today, because that is our big story. And as it happens, Wafula Chebukati is returning any moment from now to the Joint Parliamentary Select Committee to give his views on these proposed amendments. So tonight on the show, we'll be speaking to a number of people who have something to say about this. Dr. Ekuru Aukot, who did also make his remarks on these amendments, as well as Senator Moses Kajwang. Our lead reporter, Sophia Wanuna, today will be speaking to Kenya's Solicitor General, Nje Muturi. Also joining us on the big story tonight to just get more perspective will be Timothy Otieno, who is currently covering that appearance that is scheduled any moment from now. That's all coming up on the show. But first, let's start off with Timothy Otieno, who is joining us now from the precincts of where this discussion has been happening all week, gathering public views on these proposed, now contentious amendments. Timothy, good evening. On the big story tonight, what more can you tell us about what time the chair is expected back there at those hearings, and indeed whether he will come with all commissioners or some of them?
Well, Yvonne, initially the committee had adjourned at about 5:30 and had given Wafula Chebukati up to about 7 p.m. to call on the other members of the commission and the secretariat, if he wished, to accompany him into the sessions today. Now, that time has since passed, and we were informed a few minutes ago that he was supposed to be appearing before the committee at 8 p.m. So it's now about 5 minutes past 8. We are yet to see the IEBC chairman present himself before this joint parliamentary committee, but we are told that any minute from now he will be able to present himself so that they can add their voice to these particular bills that are set to change to some extent the manner in which the October 26th presidential elections will be held. Now, earlier on, he was actually given a chance to explain himself and just explain to the committee why he appeared on his own. He was not flanked by any other member of the commission except himself. He was, indeed, he said that the other commissioners were out on assignment trying to work to ensure that the October 26th elections are free, fair and credible, and could not accompany him. And according to his argument, he was insisting that he was speaking on behalf of the commission. But of course, the joint committee did not subscribe to that particular line of thought. They requested that he has to come with other members because most of the contentious issues in this amendment bill touch on the person of the chairman of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, and there may have been instances where he would have been required to speak as the chairman, and in other instances where the commissioners would be required to answer and submit to the Joint Parliamentary Committee. So any minute from now, he did reaffirm that he would get his colleagues. The exact number of people expected to come with him still remains unknown, but the committee gave him leeway to come with perhaps about 3 or 4 people. If possible, he could get others from the Secretariat. Remember, this afternoon, the CEO, Mr. Ezra Chiloba, who is the head of the Secretariat, was appearing before the National Assembly's Budget Committee to try and push for more funds ahead of the preparations for the elections. So maybe he may not accompany Wafula Chebukati this evening. But earlier on, Yvonne, remember, this is the final day of the submissions for this particular case. This was the last day. Earlier on, we saw submissions from the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, whose chair and vice chair did give out some of their concerns, particularly touching on one aspect of the bill that requires that a person holding the position of the chairman does not have to have equivalent qualifications to any judge of the Supreme Court. They raised concern in that regard. The Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission also added their voice to this afternoon's session. We had Eliud Wabukala, the chairman, of course, say that although not elaborating specific clauses, but he was of the point of view that indeed the laws were perhaps appropriate, but the timing was what they were questioning as a commission, and had requested that perhaps if they could hold on to the amendments until after the 26th when the elections are held. Earlier on also, the Communications Authority also added its voice, insisting that they were for pro-electronic transmission of results, but also backed up by the manual system. As it is, the Communications Authority brought to light the network coverage of the country, only insisting that majority of the country, about 70% of the country, had a network coverage of 2G that only allowed for the transmission of text messages. Now, 2G network does not allow for the transmission of photograph and scanned documents. 4G network that actually does allow for the transmission of scanned documents and photographs only covers about 17% of the country. So the Communications Authority was of the opinion, and actually did support the clause that allows for a manual backup and the concurrent transmission of results, both electronic and manually. So just any minute from now, aside from those submissions, we are expecting Wafula Chebukati, accompanied by a section of the commissioners, to bring and, of course, offer their submissions to the Joint Parliamentary Committee that NASA, for a 3rd day running, NASA members at least have not come to this particular session, so they've been purely a Jubilee affair, if you may call it that, Yvonne.
All right, thanks very much, Timothy Otieno. We'll definitely catch up with you once the chair and his fellow commissioners or staff come with him to the county hall to make their submissions tonight. Like you rightly said, today is the last day, so whatever time he will go straight into that. We will definitely bring that to you here live. Thank you very much, Timothy Otieno. That is indeed our big story. Chebukati set to go before that Joint Parliamentary Select Committee. It's taking place at County Hall, last day today. What will he have to say before them? We know what he has said about it before. So we'll be speaking to a number of persons who have made comments today, as you've heard from Timothy, the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, the Communications Authority, Dr. Ekuru Aukot, who was also a former presidential candidate seeking to be on the ballot a 2nd time around, and he also drafted the Constitution. We'll get to hear his views on that, as well as the Solicitor General, who will be speaking with Sophia Wanuna, our lead reporter, on the big story tonight. But first, let's start off by hearing from Moses Kajwang today. He's the senator for Homa Bay County. Senator, good evening. Welcome to the big story. I'd like to get your quick reaction to the events that we have seen happening earlier this afternoon. The chair being turned away, asked to come with all the commissioners. What's your take?
Good evening, Yvonne. What has happened today is quite unfortunate. I think what the committee should have done was to allow the chairman to make his presentations, and if his presentations were not found to be adequate, then that is when they should have asked for additional information or other commissioners. But this just goes to tell you that whatever is going on at County Hall is a charade. We are talking about laws that nobody needs. There is a fundamental principle in systems theory that changes to any infrastructure must be driven by the needs of the users. The users, when it comes to electoral laws, will be the IEBC, and it will be the voter. The IEBC is on record as saying that these are changes that are unnecessary. It is not for shortage of laws that the last elections were bungled. It is people who bungled them. What we are being treated to is a charade, and you can see the way they are treating the chairman of the IEBC tells you that they already have a preconceived notion, because part of the amendments that Jubilee is trying to ram down our throats has to do with the chairman of the Electoral Commission. These guys have sat down and in their wildest imaginations, they are putting it down that the chairman of the commission might not be available to declare results or might not be available to undertake his duties. In fact, the wording of the amendment is so dangerous that where the chairman of the commission is absent for any reason, that any reason could be maybe NASA is demonstrating and roads are blocked. That any reason could be that the chairman has been placed under house arrest. These are extremely mischievous amendments, and the manner in which they've treated the chairman of the commission tells you that they've got a bone to grind with, an axe to grind with the chairman of the commission.
All right, let me also ask you this. This is developing today. The chair himself seeking clarification at the Supreme Court over the Minor Kiai case with respect to the Supreme Court verdict that was given on September the 1st. He says he was indicted by the Supreme Court for not verifying the crucial documents that the Minor Kiai case bars him from doing. But did the Supreme Court not go far enough in terms of saying, okay, if he finds any discrepancies between Forms 32A and 34B, did it go far enough to say what he can do? Because it may seem the chairman's hands may be tied. Do you agree?
The Constitution is very clear on the decision of the Supreme Court on these matters, and it is one of the instances where the Constitution says a decision shall be final. So the decision of the Supreme Court is final, and I do hope that what the IEBC is trying to do is to get clarifications that will enable them to conduct the next elections in a free and fair manner. And IEBC has been getting suggestions from very many quarters. We in the NASA coalition, we have given certain suggestions which we believe, if incorporated, will lead to an election that will be free and fair. Jubilee, on the other hand, are trying to amend the electoral laws, and there's a plethora of suggestions that are coming in. It is proper, and I think it is fair, for IEBC to seek an interpretation, but that interpretation should not be seen as a revision of the decision of the Supreme Court, because the Constitution is clear that it is final.
All right, stay with me. I will definitely be getting more views on that. I also want to remind you on the big story tonight, we're speaking to Kenya's Solicitor General, Nje Muturi, and that'll be happening with Sophia Wanuna, who's our lead reporter. It'll be interesting to hear what the Solicitor General has to say about the events today, and indeed the chair seeking more clarification on just what his role will be 20 days from today. Sophia?
Good evening, Yvonne. Thank you so much. And I'm joined by the Solicitor General, as you mentioned, Nje Muturi here in Westlands. And we are waiting to hear what the chairperson will be submitting to that joint committee of both houses of parliament. He has also filed that petition seeking clarification in as far as the documentation, those statutory forms and what he relies on and what he actually does in the event of this repeat poll, because we've had threats of it not happening, but we'll actually wait to see if the same happens. But let's begin with that crucial point, Yvonne, that has been raised by many stakeholders, especially the international community, that have raised concern about the timing of this amendment. And Solicitor General, I'll begin with that, because many have shared that concern and raised it as an issue of the Supreme Court did not say that there's an issue with the law. They said IEBC needed to have abided with the law as is. So why the amendments at this time? Many people read bad faith.
Thank you, Sophia. To answer that question, I need to take you back a bit and answer the principle behind the laws that govern the elections. You've been hearing a lot about qualitative and quantitative. Now, the election is in two parts. The expression of the sovereign will of the people of Kenya is expressed at the ballot, at the plebiscite. Before they get to the actual voting, there's a procedure. And I remember the court said it's a process, not an event. Now, the process starts off with democracy, the democratic principles free state, freedom of expression, freedom of association, forming of parties. Before it gets to the actual election, the election starts off with the registration of voters, formation of political parties, and candidates. Now, these are all part of that process. The process goes up until the voting day, when they actually vote, put their ballot inside the box, and they leave the polling center. The ballots are taken, counted, tallied, verified, and announced. In fact, they announced at 3 different locations. The first is at the polling center, second is at the constituency, and finally at the national. At the final announcement is when the election ends. Okay? Now, that's what we call the qualitative part of the election. The quantitative is actual votes. So there are 2 things you have to determine. One, the first thing you have to determine, was the voter allowed to vote freely, express his rights, his rights to vote in a free, peaceful manner, without violence, without intimidation, without bribery, without rigging? Did he have a chance to exercise that vote by secret ballot? Okay, that's the first question. Second question is, can you determine who has won that election by the outcome? Now, when analyzing an election petition, the court primary role is to first find out the first bit, did that happen? Secondly, even if there was some errors, even if there was illegality or irregularities in that process, can you determine who won the election? For example, if the gap between 2 candidates is 10,000, but the irregularities are about 3,000 or less, you can say clearly it will not affect the outcome. So our jurisprudence in Kenya has been, and has been forever, and it stems back to a case called Morgan, and it was determined there by Lord Denning in this case that you have to use both the qualitative and the quantitative. In Kenya, unfortunately, when the law was being passed, Section 83, instead of putting "and," they put "or." Notwithstanding this, with that law in place, the court has interpreted how I've told you. Because what's the most important aspect of an election is the right of the person and that person to vote, and that vote must count. So you can't have a situation where somebody fills a wrong form, although everything went well, and because they fill the wrong form, the election is invalidated.
All right. Yeah. So that is one aspect, Solicitor General, of these amendments. It's seeking, though, to change quite a number of other laws in as far as amendments to the Elections Act are concerned, an act that was reached upon in a bipartisan fashion. And now you have only Jubilee members seating in County Hall, and we have IEBC chair and the other commissioners about to go there. So there's concern about this timing still, that yes, on one hand, there could be legitimate issues that need to be addressed, but the timing, many read a lot of ill motives on that still.
Yes, okay. That may, as it were, but you must consider this. The choice is this: do we go back to another election where we have a law that which would clearly invalidate an election on a procedure, non-compliance with the procedure? And as you heard the Chief Justice saying in his judgment, that if we come back with the same, we will invalidate the election. Therefore, we can have a cycle of elections every 60 days. I don't think this was. And I think the intention was that the voters' voice is heard. And that is why we're bringing this particular section in. And it must be brought in now because it will affect, as Joki's judgment, Joki Ndungu's judgment, the dissenting judgment, said that it will affect even the outcome of other elections.
Yet that was a dissenting judgment, not the majority, which is what should form jurisprudence, isn't it?
That is correct, but I'm saying it's instructive because the law, now the courts are bound by what the Supreme Court has passed. They're bound by it. Therefore, MCAs, MPs, women rep, senators, governors, now at risk of having their election overturned on technicalities, not on numbers.
Another big concern is about the electronic transmission vis-a-vis the manual transmission, and these amendments proposing that the manual be the final word. Yet the electronic aspect is what Kriegler, in essence, advised from what Kenya has and where Kenya has come from. So why are you seeking to change that pretty much very fast and quick way of transmitting and sending the actual result from the polling station, as opposed to somebody coming hundreds of kilometers away with a form, that being the final word? Correct. Sophia, that's a very good question. What we're doing is not seeking to change that. We are now crystallizing that law, because we all voted. It's a paper ballot. It is a manual election. We actually fill with your pen, and you put it in the box, and it's counted manually, and it's filled manually in a form. Form 34A is filled at the polling center. So the essence of the election is manual, and the mistake we're having is we're trying to interpret the law in such a way that it appears that electronic outweighs manual. But if it's a manual election, manual must have more weight than electronic.
But what manual can be tampered with, and we're trying to secure a more transparent process.
Correct. Manual can be tampered with, and so can electronic. Now, the good thing about the manual is at the point of signing 34A at the polling center, or 34B at the constituency, or 34C at the National Tallying Center, copies are made immediately, and they're all signed by all the parties and the agents. Therefore, you have a physical copy of what has been declared at that stage. Now, electronic is electronic. It can be tampered with, it can be interfered with. It's more at risk. I think the purpose of Kriegler's report, if I remember correctly, was to transmit quickly so that there can be no space in between the vote and the final election, so people can see the votes going, increasing. It was for more to keep that, to show that there's the election is going on, and these are the votes, not as a final outcome, because a final outcome in any election, even in ours, waits until all the forms are in.
As we take this back to Yvonne in studio, one would argue with electronic, if you tamper, it can be seen through the logs, which there's still the question of IEBC not honoring the orders from the court. With manual, if they tamper, you'll not be able to know. Briefly.
Again, both arguments hold. Both arguments hold. What we want in Kenya is to have a free election, free, open election, something that we can all stand by and say this is a good election. And with that point in mind, I think we did have a very good election. I believe, as a citizen, I went, I voted, I left, it was peaceful, I watched TV, there was no violence, it ended very well. The observers, all the observers said the same thing I'm saying. It was a peaceful election. Okay. It was overturned because of forms. So we have reached a situation where we have to look at the law again before we enter this election, so that we do not have a situation where Kenyans go back to an election without getting the outcome that they have voted for.
All right. And Yvonne, as we come back to you, I remember one of our guests tonight, Akuru Court, who was one of the interested parties in the case. And allow me to ask one more question to the Solicitor General, because there's concern about the pulling out of Raila Odinga in this race, if he does choose to do so. And what would happen if he does before these amendments become law, if they will become law, SG?
Sophia, as we stand here, a law. We always have laws, and laws cover everything. It's assumed the laws we have will cover everything, every aspect. Right now, if you pull out, I'll assume the laws that will apply, electoral laws, that if a candidate pulls out, he forfeits his opportunity, and that's his right.
But then what happens, because current laws, the reason there's an amendment saying the other candidate automatically becomes president is because there is no such law at this point.
No, I'm saying Kimani Ichung'wah declared the member of parliament for Lemuru, I believe. There was no other candidate. It's the right of a candidate to contest or not to contest. If it doesn't contest, automatically the other candidate automatically becomes the winner. Any other interpretation, I think, would be absurd.
All right. Thank you very much. Njamuturi, Solicitor General, speaking with us. Yvonne, to you.
Sophia, sorry, before you let the Solicitor General go, it would be interesting to hear then what he thinks about the petition that is in court by a Member of Parliament, Pika Singh, who is seeking to compel Raila to be on the ballot. All right. Oh, our signal is failing us at this most crucial moment. I hope we can get that a little bit later on, because it will be interesting to hear the Solicitor General's views. He says it is the right of any candidate to participate or not. So it will be interesting to just hear his views on that. But let's talk about those contentious issues that one of them that was raised by the Solicitor General himself. And the main contention would appear to be of the bill, 6(1)(d) of the bill, which is an amendment of Section 39 of the Elections Act 2011. It states the following: where there is a discrepancy between the electronically transmitted and manually transmitted results, the manually transmitted results prevail. Another one that's contentious, 6(1)(e), that reads, any failure to transmit or publish the election results in an electronic format shall not invalidate the result as announced and declared by the respective presiding and returning officers at the polling station and constituency tallying centre, respectively. So we've heard what the Solicitor General has to say on this issue. I'd just like to hear Senator Kajwang's final thoughts on this contentious issue. Senator, what are your thoughts as to this particular proposed amendment?
This is an example of what is wrong with these amendments. Two things are going to happen. Number one, dead voters are going to rise from their graves. They will come and vote because there will be no need for biometrics. Because they are talking about waiving issues of electronic, including in identification and in transmission. So you are going to get dead voters rising, voting and going back to their graves. Secondly, you're going to have people declare results or results declared at the polling station, but then they change somewhere along the way. If they're coming from Homa Bay, by the time they get to Nakuru, the numbers have changed, and you'll be told that the numbers that have been sent manually are the ones that should prevail. There is a reason why Parliament approved a cumulative budget of 40 billion shillings to IEBC to invest in information technology. There is a reason why a bipartisan committee that sat at Windsor last year decided to legislate and put into law the Kenya Integrated Electoral Management System. There is a reason why we have made all these investments. And you know what baffles me, Sophia, is that the same Jubilee that is trying to push these amendments is the same government that in 2013 was telling us that they were digital and the rest of the people were analog. Today, they are the guys who are talking of manual, whereas we are the people who are talking about servers and source codes and opening things up. If Jubilee has the confidence that it won the election on 8th of August, I would expect them to go out there and be confident enough that they will win with the landscape as it was. But all these efforts and all these moves, they betray the panic that is within the Jubilee camp, that in a free and fair contest, it is impossible for them to win, and that is why they must introduce a backdoor, and that backdoor is an override of electronic in favor of manual that can be manipulated and that can reactivate dead voters in the voters' register.
Senator, the Solicitor General has just said to us tonight on the big story that this is in fact not seeking to change the law but to crystallize it, because we vote manually and then the results are transmitted electronically. So he says these amendments are in essence to crystallize the law that's already in place.
Sophia, sorry, Yvonne.
Yeah.
Identification of voters on election day is electronic, and they want to override that. And why did we say that voters must be recognized by biometrics? And biometrics, we said, that is not limited to fingerprint. We talked of iris and other factors. They want people who are not in the voters' register to be able to vote, even though the casting of the vote in the ballot box is manual. But the first process in voting is electronic. That is identification. Then you do the manual insertion in the box. Then you do the manual counting. Then you do the electronic transmission. If we allow IEBC and if we allow Jubilee to have its way, then I'm sorry, we are going to have a situation where it will be difficult to control the number of people and to audit the number of people who vote and to audit the numbers. And, you know, Sophia, while interviewing the Solicitor General, is right. If you have an electronic system, there is a footprint, there is a log. A manual system, there is no way of you to confirm whether there were changes, there were alterations along the way. If we want to hold elections on 26th, and if we want Kenyans to accept the results, let us focus our energies on making sure that technology works. In fact, that is a fundamental difference between the NASA coalition and Jubilee. NASA, on one hand, would like effort to be invested in technology that works, and that is why we are saying open up the servers. Give us access to the source codes. Let us make sure that the systems are empty before any numbers come in. Jubilee, on the other hand, because of their panic, they want us to do away with an electronic system which is much more transparent. Manual will lead this country into chaos, and the 40 billion that we have invested in information technology at the IEBC is not money that we can just throw down the drain simply because people are panicking over the likely result of the next election.
All right, Senator for Homa Bay County, Moses Kajwang, we thank you for your views on this issue tonight. It continues to be the big story, even on the final day of submissions from members of the public to that Joint Select Committee. It's holding the hearings at the County Hall here in Nairobi. The man of the moment expected there any time now. Everybody waiting to hear, of all people, what the IEBC itself thinks about these proposed amendments. He was sent away earlier today, but is expected back with his fellow commissioners. We will see just how many people he will come with, or whether he will come with the Secretariat as well, that being the CEO, Ezra Chiloba. Our Timothy Otieno is also there at the County Hall, just focusing on that. As soon as that happens within this hour, we will bring that live to you. Also, after the break, we'll be speaking to somebody who made his submissions earlier. That's Dr. Ekuru Aukot. He's the leader of the Third Way Alliance of Kenya. He has some views as well on these proposed amendments. And it'll be interesting to hear because he was a part of the August 8th presidential election, seeking to be on the ballot once again, and as well was a member of the Committee of Experts of the Constitution of Kenya 2010. So we will have a lot to say. He will have a lot to say, I'm sure, on these amendments. We'll be bringing him to you next here on The Big Story.